Thank you for joining the TCT Computing Group webinar, ALM 12, A New Direction. TCT Computing Group is a large HP authorized training partner providing HP tool training. Our consulting division provides tool-specific support as well as test management and TMMI assessments. Our host for the conference today is Ken Griffin. Ken holds several HP certifications and teaches HP classes, as well as being a senior consultant for TCT, working with several Fortune 500 companies on testing best practices and ensuring their HP tool implementations are successful. Ken will present for approximately 20 minutes. If you have a question during the webinar, please post the question in the chat panel. At the conclusion of the webinar, Ken will respond to the questions posted. This webcast is being recorded. Ken? It looks like we're having a little bit of audio difficulties. Ken, are you on audio? Oh, there we go. Ken, are you there?
Yes, Sarah.
Okay, sorry. It looks like you were on mute. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone. Today I would like to talk in our session about the latest version of the ALM tool, Application Lifecycle Management Tool, from HP, version 12. Specifically, I want to turn a spotlight, or I guess now that summer's started, maybe I should say sunlight. Anyway, I want to talk about specifically a few of the new enhancements and new features and how we think they can help our existing clients and some new clients with the challenges often involved in getting ALM or QC up and running in your organization. Specifically, I want to talk about, I can't advance the slide, about the new ALM web client feature that's new to ALM 12 and how that can help you with some of the hurdles we find in getting ALM implemented, and some of the new features that are exclusive to the web client. The web client, we think, poses a new direction that HP is taking with this very popular tool, and HP has hinted that future versions will further move in this direction, similar to the web client. And finally, I want to touch on some improvements to business process testing in version 12, and that's of personal interest to me because I'm working on a successful automation initiative right now that uses business components and business process testing. I should mention that during this webinar, and I probably already used the term ALM or ALM QC for Application Lifecycle Management and Quality Center. As with previous versions of the HP tool, those do have some special meetings with different editions, if you're familiar with that. But all of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today is consistent across both of those editions of Quality Center. So for this session, I'm going to use those terms interchangeably. As I mentioned during the webinar, that I'm going to try to focus on the ALM web client and how that might be different than the versions you currently may be experiencing with the ALM tools on there. And I want to start with just to highlight some of the differences, taking a look at the new landing page or options page that HP calls about within the tool. And specifically, I want to take a quick look at the sorry, I advanced that slide mistakenly. Let me go back. About the ALM desktop client, which that might be the interface that you're currently more used to. But then I want to focus, as I said again, on the ALM web client. So there is those two user interfaces now with this version of ALM. And so if we drill down onto the web client, I'm going to run this in a demonstration a little bit, so I'll just briefly talk about this, and then you'll see these pages kind of in a cleaner interface. That the ALM desktop, or ALM, yes, desktop client, has the login page that you're probably familiar with to get authenticated and log into your ALM project. And then we'll take a look at some of the main user interface for the desktop client and how they've changed that in version 12. So let me jump out and go to my to a demonstration. I'm just pausing a minute so that everyone should be able to see now this is the new landing page of ALM 12. And again, I'll start with in my demonstration on the desktop client. So I'm going to click on the desktop client. This is the new login page for the desktop client. Still downloads the components that you may have been familiar with previous versions. I'm going to go ahead and authenticate myself and then choose my domain and project. So similar functionality that we would have seen in previous versions. And that actually gets us into the main user interface to ALM desktop on there. And let me just focus quickly on some of those options in the desktop client. And they replaced up here, this area, well, it's actually this whole area, with that you might be familiar with the common toolbar. That's now been replaced by this masthead on there. A little bit cleaner interface on there, so they freshened it up, took out some of the complexity. And let me actually run this. So some of the things that the masthead can do is quickly switch between projects on there. So that was a little cumbersome, and I've seen people before, as I've worked with people, that often are logging off and logging back in to switch projects, even though the previous version had a capability to do this, but they've certainly moved that up. What user I'm logged into, the gear icon here replaces the tools menu that I can do some common tools type of actions. The help option has been moved to the masthead and icon here. And I'm going to jump all the way down to the lower left-hand side because there's also a sidebar option that they've added in the desktop version to quickly get to the help. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. So let me get to the help for the ALM version on there. They've moved the forward and back up to very simple buttons. This, again, used to be on the common toolbar. So I'm going to go to do a back to get me back there. One of the other things they've added is under the logo button is this pinned items, allow you to pin assets, requirements, test cases, or defects that you need to follow up on, and allow you to pin them and quickly get access to those particular items. So you're in control of pinning items, and then allow you to quickly get to a specific item. Like here, I'll click on this defect to quickly get to defects. So that's what pinning is, to quickly get to a new item. I'm going to go back. The other options that you'll see in the main area of the display, you'll probably be familiar with. The modules still have their menu bars, the tree if that's appropriate, and the detail tabs if depending on what asset you're looking at. So that's a quick peek at the desktop. Again, I'm going to go back to the slide deck for the next talks that I wanted to do on here. And again, I mentioned today I wanted to focus on the web client. That is the new capabilities with version 12. And so, exciting option within ALM 12, this web client. The nice thing is it's pure web. So there's no client components. We'll probably hear the cheering all the way through the phone lines on that. So what that means is that there's benefits to that is that there's more supported environments. So not just Internet Explorer, but Chrome, Firefox, and Safari are supported. New support for different hardware platforms, Windows, Mac OS, Linux, and Utumbu. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. Again, pure web, so faster performance and the features that are there. The one we think is really interesting is that easier client install. And so because of there's no components, there's no client components to either download or push to client machines, and no special permissions that are needed on the client machine. And we're finding that this is becoming more of a challenge with previous versions of ALM during installs or upgrades, as more and more clients are locking down what can happen on the local client, or especially in the virtualization environment, that the local user doesn't have the permissions that's often required on previous versions. So this is quite exciting that the new version does not have any of those items in there. The user interface has been updated. It's more intuitive with the standard views or workspaces, as they're calling it, to view and navigate. There is customization still abilities that are in there based on the role the person is doing, but a very cleaned up user interface on there. The web client currently available for the requirements and defects modules, so that's primarily focused on the requirements management and defect resolution type of roles. And so now I'd like to take a look at the switch out to the web client as a demonstration of that, see how it actually works. So I'm going to go ahead and switch again back out to the live demonstration. Again, I'm pausing a little bit for the screens to refresh. There we are. And so now I'm going to choose the second option. So I'm back on the landing page, and so I'm going to use the second option off the landing page, which is the web client. So this is the web client login, so a little bit different, cleaned up user interface. Still provides similar functionality that I just demonstrated, because I still need to authenticate into a project and pick and choose a domain and project that I would like to use. I'm going to go into the same one that I was just using, so the default values are going to work for me. And so this is the web client, simplified user interface. The modules are accessible at the top in a drop-down. So as I mentioned, the requirements and defects module are there, as well as a home page, and I'll quickly switch to that, because if you first use this, if you have an opportunity to try this yourself, this is the first option you normally are connected to. So I'm going to switch between the modules with this drop-down on there. So the modules are accessible via this masthead. I can quickly switch between projects in the web client using the drop-down and tiered menus that are dropped down here. So quickly get into all the domains and projects that I have access to, not just the ones that I previously accessed. And so this is a very nice way to switch between projects. I can get into information about my user ID by clicking over on the right of the project selection into the name that I'm logged in as, to quickly be able to get to the user settings and set my email, and I put a phone contact in there as well. As well, in the web client, I have the ability to change the photo and upload a new avatar for my user credentials. This is quite a nice feature and moves up that information that was buried deep within the user interface in previous versions. I'm going to come off of that. Again, the help is here in the masthead, the gear menu for the web client, a lot simpler, has the ability to get into customization of the user settings, and really the only user setting there is in there is whether you want to auto-save, and again, a logout area within the item. I'm going to make a quick change to this requirement that I'm looking at, just to highlight the fact that web client has save and restore buttons. So the feature that I'm often asked for people that are used to dealing with Word or Excel, where's the save button? And so in the web client version of ALM 12, they've added that ability to save or restore. I'm going to go ahead and do a restore on that particular item to restore that name of the requirement back. There's a couple of different views in the new web client. I'm on the details view currently. I can switch over to the children view so that I can see all of the children of the requirement I currently have highlighted within that item. And if I click on one of them, so the payment methods in this case, here's how they've built the, or how you can build the requirements tree, is they've added an add before or an add after the current item that I have selected. So again, simpler user interface to build the requirements tree. Of course, the dragging and dropping still works to manually reorder items if I need to do that. The other thing I think that's quite interesting is what they're calling the author mode. I'm going to go ahead with the item highlighted in the requirements tree. I'm going to switch to author mode. What that does is for the level that I have selected in the tree, on the right it creates like a Word document of all of those requirements that are within that hierarchical structure in a Word-like user interface that I can easily update. And so here we're on the booking system. I'm going to go ahead and make some quick changes just for the sake of time today. But I can go down through each of the requirements that are in that tree structure, just like it's a Word document, and do the maintenance of the requirements or build the requirements items directly within a Word-like document. It automatically numbers this thing, and the first one where I highlighted from the tree is indicated here, and then each one is numbered. And if there's a tiered structure, as there is down here in payment methods, sorry, that's scrolling faster than I want it to, I get a sub-numbering system within when there's a tree structure. So it's easy to update that, very Word-like, so people that are used to dealing with these items in Word will find this user interface very useful. And you can still get down to the details by clicking on one of these numbers, and you can get to the requirements details to add further detailed categorization that you might have in your project. But the authoring mode is very nice in presenting a user interface typically or similar to what people who do this kind of work are working in prior to ALM implementation on that. The administrator gets to decide which levels of the requirement tree can be used in authoring mode. So for example, if I go here in the hierarchical structure of the requirements, the administrator has not set this requirement type as an option that I can use for doing the authoring view, but I can still try it out to see if it'll do that, and it won't. Sorry, I wanted to go here and try that. And there we go. And so even though it said that our administrator didn't think that was the level that you would want to be doing authoring on, I can go and actually choose a level and get it to try it out to see if I want to use authoring. So that's the authoring mode. I think that's very useful, again, for the requirements management teams to help out there on that. The other feature that's very interesting is the categorization. Categorization is the ability within a hierarchical structure, building a virtual hierarchical structure. So unlike the physical structure that you might have defined in the ALM desktop or in the traditional view of requirements, I can actually have my own temporary categorization or hierarchical structure, which is what I'm calling a virtual structure. And I get to choose what that virtual structure is. So let's say I'm going through a requirement review process. I might want to add categories for the reviewed and then the priority of the requirements. On there, you can add up to 4 of these categorizations. What we can now see is what it appears to be on the tree area of the requirements, a new requirements tree, but this is virtual that I've set on there. I'm going to switch back to the manual option. And so I could actually go ahead and, again, if I'm doing a reviewing process, I probably want to go to the not reviewed area, and I'm going to start with the most urgent ones on there and allow me to get in there and take a look at what are all the requirements and actually do it based on what I think is an important hierarchical structure independent of the physical structure that is defined for the requirements on there. And so that's a very interesting option of the categorization area to add your own categories. Again, I mentioned there's up to 4 of them, and you can arrange them according to what your team role is, or what your role is at any point in time. You can also do that in the defect module. So I'm going to switch over to the defects module now, just to demonstrate that same feature. Again, I'll define a new view on there. Maybe I want to, again, do it based on priority. And assign to, I'll do a categorization for assign to. Great. There we go. And again, I'll apply that. Oh no, I had a filter on, a sort on that, so I'm going to sort by the status. And so some of these features are in previous versions, but the interface has been fairly well updated. And again, I create what's normally not in a hierarchical structure, the defects. It creates the virtual hierarchical structure for me. And so I might want to look at the priority 5, assigned to James, and it'll show me all those defects as if it's in a hierarchical structure. So that's categorization. The next thing I want to talk about is workspaces. Workspaces are how I get to save all of that customization or definitions that I've gotten. And so here in the view, I can actually go ahead and, if I have items set on there, like I just did for categorizations, filters, sort orders, or column selections, I can go ahead and save my current workspace on there, and I can then go ahead and take a look at that. What are all the workspaces I have? So with this one that I had changed there, you can add it as a favorite for the items that I wanted, or you can actually go ahead and load it, which will actually switch the user interface to whatever that saved workspace was. So this is how the user can customize their own views based on what they're working on. Again, it can be however they set their filters, their sorts, their column selections, any categorizations, and then they can save it and mark it as a favorite, and then easily switch between any of the views that you have. And I'm going to switch back to my standard view as a favorite on there. So really useful switching with workspaces. Customization can also be done by administrators, where based on certain roles, you can change what the detail view is when you're in a defect or a requirement, and so that the user doesn't have to do that and can build up some common views of that. So again, I've done some of that. So for a developer, for example, I might want to have a special view for them. So I'm going to log out and I'm going to log in as a developer back into that same project. The developer has a specific form on there for the defects views. First of all, they only have access to the defects module, so they don't even see the requirements. And we can see that this is limited, so we've got a specific form for the developers, so they only see certain defects, in this case all the ones assigned to the person that I'm logging in as. So all of the ones are assigned to James. So that can be done by the administrator of the project, so I have some custom forms and some business rules that kick in based on the person that's logging in. This functionality replaces the ALM desktop's workflow scripting on there. So again, for the sake of time, I'll switch back here to my slides on there. And so I went through a demonstration just now of the new desktop client. I went through the login and both the requirements and the defect modules on there. I think it's good for auxiliary teams that are often reluctant to move to ALM as you're trying to adopt those features. They simplify it. It's much more intuitive of a user interface. You can then get them to manage their assets directly within the ALM user interface on there. I think it helps with adoption, and that's what I wanted to talk about here. If we want to adopt this web client, consider a phased introduction strategy. There's permissions that you can set in ALM that says that you can, on the web UI, just have view permissions, and so that's good for read-only ALM consumers on there. I'm thinking even some of the requirement reviewers or project managers might be good as an option for them, or some key business experts that only need read-only access would benefit from that more intuitive and decluttered user interface. As role-specific forms and business rules are defined, I would consider rolling that out to other roles on there. Again, the requirements management, defect resolution type of roles I see would be key. Early adopters to the ALM web client would be nice. Although we didn't discuss in detail today, there's some other ALM features like the single sign-on that can make accessing ALM easier, so I don't have to do the authentication all the time. It'll use my Windows credentials to get access into that. And so that can be of great assistance, and certainly one of our experts would love to talk to you about that online if you think that would be something that you would want to move forward with on that. For defect triage sessions and requirements review sessions, I could see that the web client would be very useful for that and could help with those meetings and be using the tool live on there, especially with the improved in performance. ALM 12 also had some goodies in there for automation advocates, which I'll count myself as one of those. Specifically around the business process testing area. These include things like new reports, improved groups and permission settings, increased integration with the Sprinter and Quick Test Professional's new name, Unified Functional Testing. So the improvements to that for both performance and really debugging improvements. They've, of course, removed the BPT wrapper in its entirety now when you're running, so BPT tests are directly accessed from the Unified Functional Testing platform. This allows, of course, performance when running, but the exciting feature is it allows debugging capabilities within business process tests directly in the Unified Functional Testing user interface, which can really help when you're trying to assess what might be going wrong with automation business process tests. Although remember, business process tests can be used when you're doing manual testing as well to break down all of your tests in a componentized way on that. For sake of time, again, I won't go into details during our session today, but again, contact us if you want some more information about business process testing. I did take the time of capturing what I'm kind of excited about, which demonstrates a business process test directly in the Unified Functional Testing user interface. So you see the BPT test here, which is the tab that's highlighted, but you can also see all the components that are underlying that business process test And again, the ability to set breakpoints, take a look at the parameters that are being passed from ALM, nice features like that. So today we took a look at ALM 12 and how the new web client can help within your organization and can benefit you. And the ALM adoption and implementation, I focused on the ALM web client and the new capabilities within that, which again we think signals, well, HP has kind of hinted that this signals a new direction within the ALM tool set, and we like the direction that that's going. And then I finished off today talking about business process testing and some exciting options that I see in there for projects like the one I'm on that are using business process testing toolkit to help with achieving some of their testing objectives. And so that's the prepared material I had for today. I want to actually open it up now to questions. Let me see if there's any chat questions in there, on there. I do have a couple questions.
And I think we have time for about 1 or 2 questions, but what I can do is leave the webinar open, so if people have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A panel, and I'll leave this open, and then Ken will be able to respond to the questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.